Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of the Pack a Day podcast. Thank you for joining us. Uh, we're not Andy Herman, and I'm only one third of your usual audio Monday crew. It's a haphazard patchwork uh, Monday here for the Pack a Day crew. I think that could maybe describe everything that happened in Sunday's game against the Vikings. The Packers lose 27-25 in Minnesota. I am Dan Koenig. With me is my good buddy going way back to the game on Wisconsin olden times, Jimmy Christensen. Um, Jimmy, I want to start with just like kind of the obvious question I think everyone is probably just thinking about now with the Packers. There's one game left in the season against a Bears team that you should win win against. Um, are the Packers able to go on the road and win a playoff game? Because this is now, if you assume you beat a Bears team with nothing to play for in week 18, and so your only losses now are against two division winners in the Lions twice and the Eagles, and now the Vikings twice. Are you that much of a tier below? Are you that distinctly below the top echelon of NFC teams where you say, I don't trust this Packers team on the road?
That's such a that's a tough question because based on performance, yeah, you would say they're a tier below right now. Based on talent, we're right up there, and that's the tough part is a
Yeah.
lot of the first half with the Vikings too, and not even first half, first three quarters really. Um, a lot of it is just it's those self-inflicted wounds that we saw with the Lions, the first Lions game. The second one they beat us. It is what it is. They got that last second field goal. First game with the Vikings, we had multiple turnovers in the first game. We try to rely a little too much now in hindsight on Jordan Love's injury being an issue. Brian Flores' defense is an issue. Like, he was befuddled in the first game. He was befuddled in the second game. So right now, I think I'm gonna lean more on I think we're a tier below until they prove me otherwise. Because right now, I can keep saying the same thing of like, no, we have all the talent, self-inflicted wounds, which both are true. But when the product isn't being played on the field to where you expect, you can't keep relying on that. So we're a tier below until they show otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, really, honestly, you can make the argument that the Packers were only truly competitive in two of those losses. I think that the Eagles, week
Yep.
1, you were competitive, and then the Thursday night game against the Lions a couple of weeks ago, I would say. I know that the Packers had a chance basically to get a stop, get the ball back, and go down and kick a game-winning field goal. It's hard. It's really hard to look at what happened Sunday and say that they were quote unquote competitive. I mean,
Yep.
really, it was a team in the Vikings that let the foot off the gas a little bit too much at the very end is what let the Packers get back into it. I think you're spot on with it that, yeah, there is talent all over this team. They are dealing with injuries. I think it was pretty obvious that not having Anderson or Williams in as safety alongside Xavier McKinney proved to be very crucial. I think they do miss Quay Walker's ability at times, and Christian Watson, as much as we in the Packers community kind of rag on him at times for drops or whatever. His speed, it changes the dynamic of how that offense runs. All of that said, though, it's now been 5 times where you've gone against the top tier teams in the NFL, in the NFC, and you've lost. And until you can beat them, then the narrative is going to stay there. And honestly, I don't wonder if that narrative has kind of creeped into this team itself. It feels like you mentioned, Jimmy, kind of like everything kind of has to go right for the team to kind of make it work. You're a parent. I'm a parent. It feels like whenever you have like a kid that's trying to learn how to do something for the first time, and it's like it's very simple to do. But like if it's not exactly the way that they know how to do it, it doesn't work. And they get frustrated and it's done. And that's what it feels like sometimes with this team is that if the game doesn't fall exactly how it needs to fall for them, where they jump out to an early lead, they can establish the run, the defense is playing complementary football, they're getting pass rush. If those things aren't happening, this team doesn't seem to have something to fall back on. And I just don't know how sustainable that can be when you go into the playoffs. I mean, Jordan Love, he finished with 185 yards, but that number is very misleading. He had like I think 63 yards going into the end of the third quarter. This was an offense that just did not seem like it knew what to do today against, like you said, Brian Flores just had them in a hurt locker today.
Yeah, it's a weird thing too because we always say how the Packers offensive line is such a strong unit on the team.
Yeah.
And we knew going into this game, the Vikings defense is going to blitz. It's what they do. Highest rate blitz in the NFL. And we ended up gave up 3 sacks, maybe
Yep.
3 sacks. So they got home 3 times, could be worse, but they made him feel uncomfortable, which is one of those things where it's like, you know what they're going to do. And we couldn't have an answer for it. It's a tough one, man, because going into this game, we've been clicking on all cylinders. And I think it's been definitely part of it is our opponents have been bad, but we did what good teams do to bad teams and we beat them and we whopped on them. And going into this one, I thought, it's going to be tough, but it was, we lost by 2 points, just like the first game. And if you want to give the Vikings the excuse Packer fans have used in the first game was, our kicker missed 2 kicks. Their kicker missed 3 kicks that one got negated by a bad call. Also bad calls against the Vikings, a pass interference, a neutral zone infraction.
Yeah.
Not there. And so it could have been a much worse game than it appeared. So I don't know, man. It's a weird position to be right now going into the playoffs of you want to think you can compete with the teams, but you hit on it too. As much as we rag on Christian Watson for drops here and there, not the leader on the team. A leader on the team is Jaden Reed, or at least was for a stretch of the team and or the season, and had a big drop again on a 4th down.
Yep.
We miss Christian Watson, his explosiveness, even just to open up the field a little bit. And we've seen right now, we live by explosive plays and we die by explosive plays. We couldn't get any today because teams are going to dial in on that. And we have to find a way. I don't know if it's the play calling. I don't know if it's Jordan Love has to kind of settle down a little bit and realize 3 plays in a row, you don't have to bomb it 20, 30 yards every time. Like you just need little chunks here and there. But it's a weird spot to know, like, you have all the talent. Yes, you can put up points against good teams. But it's in these big moments, we fall behind early and then we try to play catch up, and good teams aren't going to let that happen.
Yeah, you mentioned Jaden Reed. The drops all over this year have been terrible. You can go back and look the games where the offense struggles. It's drops. It's drops. The games where they are successful, like go back just 6 days ago against New Orleans. I was there. I saw great catches in traffic, guys reaching up, making plays. Today it was. I'm not saying that has to happen all the time, but like you said, there were very crucial drops and very catchable drops on top of that just make you like so frustrated that it's the right call to go for it on that 4th and 2 play, but you have to execute. It doesn't matter. You can game plan, you can scheme, you can do everything, but guys have to catch the ball. Jaden Reed finishing with 1 catch for 6 yards. He was targeted 4 times. I as much as I will harp on the drops as a problem, I do think it needs to be addressed, at least from my untrained eye. I don't know if this is something you've seen too, Jimmy, or anyone else has sort of noticed this, it seems like Jordan Love has the last couple of weeks, ever since probably I hate to say it, right before Toyotathon, right before kind of like Thanksgiving, it feels like he's starting to kind of regress into some of his bad habits as a passer, where he's not getting his feet set. He's trying to force balls in with his arm instead of relying on his technique and doing it. And when you go back and you watch when he's making plays and he's on rhythm and on target, he's doing all of those things. We've seen now a couple of times over the last couple of weeks, guys wide open in the flat getting just downright missed. And you go back and look, and Jordan Love his feet are not set. He's got guys in his face. He's not doing the right things. He's not doing the technical things that he's been doing when he's succeeding. And so as much as the drops are hurting, some of this does have to be laid at Jordan Love's feet because he's not being as accurate or as on target as he has been, especially if you want to compare this second half of the season to last second half of the season.
No, 100%. And there's definitely moments where he's missed open receivers. And that's a part that's just like really hard to explain because last year he does well. And there's added pressure with his contract. So like
Right.
last year, these type of performances, it's like, okay, it's his first year starting. And even now you'll get fans that say like, oh, second year starting. 100% true. I don't care about he was in the league for 5 years. Doesn't matter. It's all about playing time, getting the in-game reps. But once you get that big contract, that also has to go out the window of like, yeah, it might be a second year starting, but he has a giant contract now that we're locked into and this isn't saying I don't think he's the guy. I do think he's the guy, but it's these moments where you see him, just like you said, revert back to old Jordan Love, things that they tried to change from drafting him to kind of get into that more disciplined quarterback. And I love the freestyle of him, the moving in the pocket, making explosive plays and doing things that shouldn't be there. But it has to come with hitting players on target in rhythm and making it. I don't want to say easy because nothing's really easy in the NFL. Some of the plays Sam Darnold made today that our defense allowed, pretty easy. That last play, pretty easy. But he has to definitely step up those basic mechanicals and hitting those open receivers. And I think it was one of them. And you can't really blame him too much because there was pressure. He was getting sacked, but there was a wide open receiver down the field. I think he went from the slot. I don't know which one it was. It was just on a replay on the TV. I couldn't see the numbers. I'm blind if you can't tell from the glasses. But again, it's just like those split moments, and that's what these games are. And I said going into this game, it's going to come down to mistakes, and the Packers made more with drops. That Josh Jacobs fumble on an opening drive that looked very promising, getting that running game going. And we saw in the first game against the Vikings, we were down a lot in the first half, and we couldn't rely on Josh Jacobs. And as you said, that's a big part of our game. We need to be in our script. And I think that's the next evolution of this team is when things don't go your way, you can adjust and realize like, okay, we're not able to rely on Josh Jacobs for 2 carries every drive because we're down and we have to kind of speed up the clock a little bit, speed up the play time and get some plays open downfield. But yeah, we got our ass kicked today. There's really no other way around it, dude.
I mean, it's frustrating because Josh Jacobs does finish with 17 carries for 69 yards. He's averaging 4. That's 4 yards a carry. That should be enough for a running back to be successful. And honestly, Josh didn't really get a lot of help today. No. And you could see he made a lot of effort. There was a lot of plays where they were successful because of the effort Josh Jacobs made, in spite of the blocking he seemed to be getting at times.
That touchdown that got called back, that was literally all him. Stiff arm, taking a guy into the end zone. Like that's all Josh Jacobs, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And it's frustrating that it just seems like the offense played right into the Brian Flores game plan of don't run the ball, sit back, long developing plays, and give their defense a chance to get pressure. it's frustrating to see. And you mentioned as much as we talked there about Josh Jacobs and the effort, that fumble, that's a bad fumble. No one even touched the ball. Like, you've got to be able to hang on to that in the NFL. And that's not something that Josh has had a problem with this year, but it seems like every time something like that does crop up with Jacobs, they're at the worst possible times. And
Yeah.
there is nothing like when I saw them line up for the opening kickoff, and I'm like, great. They've got the ball. They're going to go like that. That's what you want when you're on the road. Get the ball on offense first, establish a drive, get points, and put yourself ahead and get the crowd out of it. Nothing gets them back into it than a fumble 5 plays into the game. That's just the worst possible way to start off a game. Anything else with the offense, Jimmy? I feel like we've touched all of it. Is just there needs to be more. There's too much talent. There's too much everything for games like this to keep cropping up.
Not too much. I think the one thing is there's a lot of understandably chatter about who they will extend between Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs.
Mm-hmm.
And as the team's constructed right now, yes, Christian Watson, as we both said in this show, provides a talent that no other player on this team has, and he is important to sign. He's not going to get a huge contract based on performance right now. Like, I understand it'll be higher than we've seen receivers in the past from the Packers that are a top guy because that's just the NFL right now. But when you look at Doubs too, though, Doubs is, unless we get another player on this team that is reliable hand, someone that you can go to on third downs, Doubs is our consistency. Like, we've seen it time and time again when it comes to kind of third downs and those. And they mentioned it, as weird as Tom Brady was today, saying decisive at least 800 times. they're like, Doubs is our guy when it comes to man, that he's going to get open. His route running is crisp. He has the most reliable hands. Yes, he has drops sometimes. Still more reliable than a lot of receivers on the team. And so I wouldn't rule him out yet to be a player that we bring back, because there is a connection there between Jordan Love and Romeo Doubs. Even with the weird stuff earlier in this season, like, he was pretty highly targeted. And I don't know, man. I think he's going to be a player that we need to keep around unless we have someone that we can be confident to replace him to be that consistency. But I don't see anybody right now. So I think that's also my kind of one takeaway today, because in the second half, when it was comeback time and we needed to just kind of get first downs, try to get some chunk plays, that's where Romeo Doubs is really the guy to go to. So I just I kind of want that to be in the thoughts of people of Christian Watson, big playability, super fast. Hopefully he's on the team going forward, but I don't want to overlook Romeo Doubs right now.
No, that's a really good point. I think it's very telling that when big plays are needed, it's Romeo Doubs and it's Tucker Kraft.
Yep.
They don't go and Josh Jacobs, obviously, but those are the three. And it's surprising because Jaden Reed, if you want to talk about, there are so many players on this team, especially pass catchers, who are coming in. This is their second year. There's the so-called sophomore slump. You could argue that might be kind of everyone timing that up perfectly together, that everyone's sophomore slumping at the same time. Jaden Reed looked like a last year trajectory bona fide number one wide receiver.
Yep.
And this year, and I'm not saying that that's not going to be the case, but he has not continued that same upward trajectory this year. And like you said, with everyone else out, with no Musgrave in the offense, to see how that happens, Tucker Kraft is still just a tight end. I understand that he's reliable, he's a weapon, but he's still just a tight end. Like you said, if the Packers need something to happen, it goes through Romeo Doubs, and he should be protected at all costs. Defensively, a rough showing overall, obviously giving up 27 points. But if we are talking about someone that needs to be protected at all costs.
Yeah. I already know where you're going with this.
I will do unspeakable things to keep Edrin Cooper alive, healthy, and well for this Green Bay Packers defense. Holy moly. When is the last time you saw When is the last time you can remember a middle linebacker wearing green and gold who attacks the hole, attacks the run game, and rushes the passer as well as Edgerrin Cooper has done in the handful of games that he's been healthy for this year?
Listen, he does Nick Barnett's 56 proud.
Yeah.
And Clay Matthews had a decent year at middle linebacker when he was there outside his position. But this is a player right now that he was in the backfield on a lot of plays today. And he's everywhere on the field. And you mentioned that we miss Quay Walker, and a lot of people give him crap. Yes, he makes mistakes sometimes, but before his injury, he really stepped up the last few weeks. He got hurt. He's been out with his ankle injury, but having those two on the field together, just both freak athletes, Edgerrin Cooper just being a dominant force, man. Like you can't, it's not even an like he was in the backfield a lot. He was everywhere in this game. And it's a bright spot right now for that defense. And yeah, they gave up, what was it? 27 points this game.
Points. And
they weren't put in good positions. Like we were able to score first because they made a couple defensive stops. And that's the thing with the game and the team in general is like, we rely on this offense. Matt LaFleur is the offensive head coach. We expect to put some points up. And when we scored 3 points on our third drive, like that is a disappointment. I don't care how good the defensive is. When you tote yourself as an offensive team with an offensive head coach, getting 3 points on the first 3 drives isn't a success. Like I get it. We were the first one to score. Didn't pan out very well for us. So the defense, yeah, they struggled a bit. But when you look at Zane Anderson going out in the game, before that, we're out Evan Williams, who's been a rookie stud for us and just a reliable person in that secondary next to Xavier McKinney. Jair's out, and we did a decent job limiting Justin Jefferson. Whatever he finished with is a pretty good game when your top cornerback and your top safety and your backup safety is out of the game. Bullard looked lost on a few plays, and it's not his fault. He's playing out of position where he really should be. Or I don't know where he should be because you draft him as a safety, but where you'd like him to be. It's tough because I know defense can get some blame, as they should. There's some plays that Naylor touchdown that was just wide open miscommunication, but I don't want to harp on him too much. I think the biggest thing in this game is we could not get pressure on Sam Darnold. I think that's where all this come from is, you have a weak secondary, and we did not help them at all today.
That's absolutely spot on. That's what I was going to say was, we mentioned the injuries in the secondary, specifically at safety. You don't have Jair Alexander, Quay Walker, whatever. You've been missing a lot of those guys all year long, and your defense has been very productive. The difference is, in those games when they were productive, they were getting sacks, they were getting pressures. Sam Darnold only sacked 1 time today.
Which was more of a covered sack too than an actual sack.
It was. It just seemed like there was. I don't claim to be a defensive guru, but you could see in specifically the last 2 games, the Saints and the Seahawks, you could see those inside stunts that they were working and running very well, and they were being successful. I didn't see any of it today. And if you cannot get pressure against Sam Darnold, then yeah, it doesn't matter that you held Aaron Jones to 47 rushing yards, which I don't want to discount is a feat. That is what you're supposed to do as a run defense. And again, a lot of credit goes back to Cooper and a lot of those guys. I want to also shout out Carl Brooks, who had an amazing game in the run game. It felt like he was there to clean up a lot. But Sam Darnold threw for 43 times, and they were ahead. So it wasn't like they were playing catch up or it was a shootout. It was just their game plan that we're not going to bother running the ball. Green Bay can't get pressure, and we'll throw the ball wherever we want. So that is an indictment as a defense where a team says, usually it's let's run the ball, let's possess, let's hang on to it. You can't stop us in the trenches. This time they just said, you don't have the guy. Our dudes are better than your dudes, and we're gonna do it every single time. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. And that's it shows up. So four players over 60 yards receiving for the Vikings. That's rough.
Yeah, that's bad. And it wasn't just that it was 4 players over 60 yards. It's on like key downs, players are getting opened.
Wide
It
open.
wasn't even like they were even close to being touched. Like they were wide open. And Sam Darnold missed a couple throws.
Yeah.
And also that penalty, that holding call that negated Justin Jefferson, great catch. Keyshawn Nixon, he was there, and he gets a lot of flack on Twitter. Ross, you're one of them. Like he's not as bad as people give him crap for, and he was in position on a couple plays, but it was yeah, man, that defensive line. One of the things like you look at too, going to like Pro Football Reference, they have 43 sacks, which puts them in the top 10. But then you think about it, they had 8 sacks against the Titans. They had a good amount of sacks against the Texans, which a lot of it came from just their offensive lines being bad. Our defensive line looks good against bad offensive lines. You're not going to see that in the playoffs. You're not going to be a Super Bowl contender, especially as a wild card. You're going to be playing a team that has a good offensive line and a good offense. With the beat up secondary, hopefully we get players back. I'm sure Evan Williams will come back. It's a quadricep. You have Quay Walker will probably come back. Jair is just a conundrum.
Who knows?
Yeah, you need the new Google computer that they made to figure out when he's going to come back, because you don't know. And so it's tough, man. It could be because the secondary missed pieces, but you have Rashawn Gary you're paying a lot of money to. Kenny Clark is a dominant force in the middle, but even this year when it comes to pass rush, and I know he's the defensive lineman interior, and I think Aaron Jones kind of skewed our perception on what an interior defensive lineman should do. But from what we've seen from him from years previous, like he's not up to it right now. They got to step up. Cox Jr. is a breath of fresh air. This game he didn't do much, but previously he was really a great pass rusher. And hopefully we can find a combination, whether it's disguises or taking away from Flores and trying to disguise as much as you can, provide pressure where you can, up our blitz rate, because sending 4 right now is not getting the job done.
No, it's not. And I think, you talked about like an indictment of the pass rush. The fact that we're seeing, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but Carl Brooks and Brenton Cox Jr. as guys that are leading the pass rush for this defense, even when the entire the defensive line is healthy, and you've got guys like Devontae Wyatt out there, who I think I'm checking to see I don't remember seeing him. He wasn't on the injury report. Did he go down?
Yeah, he went out with a concussion.
Okay. I was gonna say I don't remember. I didn't remember seeing him at all. That's a major piece missing. He's been you said a breath of fresh air. He's been what Kenny Clark is supposed to be in this new defense. But I mean, it's really hard when you're seeing success out of guys like Carl Brooks and Enagbare and Colby Wooden and Brenton Cox Jr. and even Aaron Mosby. Throw Aaron Mosby into the to the fray. He had a QB hit today. The defense as a whole had 4 QB hits. One of them came from Keyshawn Nixon. One of them, Aaron Mosby, Brenton Cox Jr., and Carl Brooks. You know who I didn't mention? Your 2 first-round pass rushers, Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness. Yeah. That is not sustainable. Lucas Van Ness cannot leave a game with 1 total tackle. He's been a severe disappointment in a way that Rashawn Gary wasn't even early on, because at least Rashawn Gary, he's playing behind the Smith brothers. He's a development player. They expect him to see that, and he has to an extent. I don't think he's reached the potential you're expecting out of a high first-round draft pick. Lucas Van Ness was a top 15 pick. If you're a top 15 pick as a pass rusher, you need to be disrupting games. And I don't know if there's ever been a game where we can look at and say Lucas Van Ness affected the truly had a monumental effect on the outcome of the game.
Yeah, 100%. Like you have players that you rely on that defensive line, whether it's from previous stints like Rashawn Gary, where he's had really dominant games and really dominant performances, or just draft capital. You
Right.
put a first round pick in Lucas Van Ness, you expect him to perform. And it was Jacob Morley or whatever, Mosley, I don't know, whatever his Twitter handle is, mentioned, not to give him an excuse. It's not an excuse. You still have to, it's your job. Show up, do your job. But he gets drafted in college 4-3, NFL first season. Like, hey, you're 3-4. You're not, your hand's not in the dirt anymore. You got to figure it out. To his second year of, hey, your hand's in the dirt now. Try to figure that out. We knew you're a development piece. We're switching it up on you. But even at this point in the season, you still expect a little bit more. And he'll have some flashes, and he's had some games where he's gotten some pressures and gotten there, but it's not enough right now. And I don't want to sound all doom and gloom because, again, going back to what we said before, the Packers have talent, offensive, a lot of talent, defense, a lot of talent. We spent a lot of first round picks on the defense. It's there. We have pieces of the puzzle. We haven't seen it come together against good teams, especially now losing 4 in the division. Hopefully not 5. We're going to beat the Bears. We got to beat the Bears. They suck. They're a dumpster
We're not
fire.
even going to entertain it as a possibility, Jim.
Yeah, it is what it is. But it's just against good teams, these pieces have to come together. And it sounds like excuses. I don't think it is. It's just the way of the world of when you have the youngest team in the NFL for 2 years in a row. I don't know if last year gave us a sense of like, oh, we're ahead of the curve because we beat the Cowboys and like, oh yeah, we're a Super Bowl contender, to where now we're going into the year again, the youngest team in the NFL, to where now we're realizing like, oh, okay, maybe some veteran experience would be helpful because in these big games, we're not starting hot. We're not doing what we need to do. The defense started well. They stopped them a couple of drives in a row, but our offense, those pieces aren't clicking. And I don't know if that's part of it as well. Of like, we relied too much on young talent and kind of overlooked the aspect of when it comes to big games, there's those learning curves that they're not ready for yet. And we're relying on a lot of people, whether it's sophomore slump or rookies, to just figure it out in the moment. And we'll find out in playoff times because we are a playoff team. If it does click, we're right there with the best teams in the league. If we show up like we did today, we will lose just like we did today, if not worse, if the team doesn't let the foot off the gas like the Vikings did.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a sentiment on the Packers community of this team feels like they're a year or two away. And, you know, I think you could have argued there. I saw somebody, I don't remember who it was. Somebody argued that the Packers team that won the Super Bowl in 2010, they felt like they were a year or two away from being truly successful and dominant. And I mean, that kind of showed. The following year, they went 15-1. They obviously didn't win, but they were a better team than they were when they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Any team can go into the playoffs and get hot. The Packers have that opportunity to go into the playoffs, get hot. All you have to do is just win 3 games and you're there. You're 60 minutes away from a championship. Any team can do that. That's the best part about the NFL is it does not matter what your record is. You make it into the playoffs, you have a lottery ticket, you can do it. I do think though that this team, as much as we talk about that the Packers have the chance, they can do it. Next year feels like the better opportunity because I think this team will gel a little bit more. I do think there is something to the idea that you have all of these guys on offense, pass catching wise, that are all kind of at the same stage developmentally at the exact same time. So they all kind of seem to go in these ebbs and flows together. So like one guy's not ahead of this one or this, like it's all kind of all or nothing, feast or famine. And I do think that defensively they're going to improve as well as those young guys take a step. Edwin Cooper is going to become even better. I think they'll continue to add to that. But yeah, to bring it all full circle, until we see this team prove us and the rest of the NFL otherwise that they can go, now they have to do it on the road, go on the road, and beat playoff quality teams, you are one tier below the Super Bowl contenders. And like you said, I don't think it's excuse making. I think it's just cause and effect. It's just this team doesn't play good enough at times, and they don't play good enough to beat the better teams in the NFL. And that's just the reality of it. There's really nothing else deeper to it. One positive, the field goal kicking still on point.
Yeah, absolutely. McManus, thank you.
as much, how was the rest of the play, Mrs. Lincoln? Field goal kicking, punting still seems to be on point, which is not something we could have said for a long time. But yeah, the Packers now get to wrap up at home against the Bears, a game. Jimmy, I like your take on this before we wrap up.
Yeah.
How much do you play the starters in the final week of the season? Because I look back at 2021 against the Lions, a Lions team that had nothing to play for, and you rest half of your starters going into the playoffs. They were the number one seed. Then they had a bye week, but they rest those starters, and I thought it kind of gave them a bad taste in their mouth leading into the playoffs. What do you do? What do you do this week?
I think a big thing goes to how the Commanders and Falcons go, because if there's a chance that the Commanders can get that 6th seed, because I know if we not going to happen, unexpectedly lose next week, we're not in the 6th seed anymore. I think you obviously play the starters the whole game. You dominate that game. I think it's one of those things right now going into the year. I think this game has to leave a bad taste in your mouth. You want to go into the playoffs with a positive win and getting units clicking, getting some positives for each player. And so I think right now you play the starters. Like, we're not in a position where you rest anybody. We need to, and like you said, you punch your ticket. If you get hot the right moment, granted, the NFC this year, dogfight. Like, you have the Lions, you have the Eagles, who are a great team with Saquon Barkley. You have the Vikings, who've already beat us twice. You have to get those wins where you can. You have Sean McVay potentially coming up, who that team can either put 45 points up against Buffalo or 13 points against the Cardinals. Like, you don't know who you're going to get with that team. So you have to be ready for anything. I think right now you play your starters, you make them play the game. Hopefully you leave, knock on wood, without any injuries. But that's just a risk you do in the NFL. I think right now the team's not in a position to bench anybody, because we have to, as Mike McCarthy said, stack successes. And going into the playoffs, it's you need to stack some successes.
Yeah, I mentioned this in what was the pregame show for the Saints game last week. Was you had 3 goals over the next 3 weeks against the Saints. Beat the Saints, punch your ticket to the playoffs. They got that done. This week, it was supposed to be go into a hostile environment and show that you can compete with a playoff team. I think you give this at best an incomplete. Worst, they failed. The third week against a Bears team who you haven't lost to in half of a decade at home, going into the playoffs, you kick the crap out of this team and go into the playoffs with the right mentality. And I think I think you're spot on with it. I don't think you rest starters. I think maybe if Christian Watson's not feeling super great, you don't play him. Josh Jacobs maybe doesn't get as many carries, this time, spread it around to Brooks and Wilson a little bit, maybe. But I think other than that, really, if you're good to go, I really hope we get to see Jair Alexander at least a little bit. I understand who knows what's going on with that, but
let me ask you this though. Do you think there's some nonsense? No offense to Peter Bukowski. I think you're an idiot. Do you do you think there's anything else going on? Like, I really do think it's a sense of just like his knee's not ready, but
I don't think there's anything else going on. Honestly, I think what this is it's a sign of a different training staff in Green Bay. It's the same training staff that got Christian Watson healthy, basically. I think if he doesn't take the hit on that knee on that end around in the Saints game last week, he plays this week. You
Yeah.
know, there's nothing you can do about that. They figured out his hamstring injury. I think Jair is just dealing with I think he's dealing with some weird things, and I would be very shocked if anything else was going on, because I think Jeff Hafley will be the first person to tell you having him out there changes the makeup of this defense, and
Oh
it
yeah.
gives him the opportunity to run the defense that he wants. And so if there was anything going on, I think that would be front page news somewhere, you know?
Yeah. I agree. And I think it was the athletic, it was the athletic that pointed out too. Since the bye week, around where Jair went out, we
Yeah.
were bottom of the half in cloud covered, so cover 2, cover 6. Since then, we were top half of the league in it, and that's a huge reason of because Jair's out. Like you
Yeah.
have to kind of make up for your cornerbacks, and whether that continues when he comes back or not. But like our defense does look different without him. And if Jeff Hafley, if his game plan looks a lot better with Jair in there, he's going to try to get Jair in there. I
Right.
don't think there's, at this point too, we have our ticket punched, and yeah, you want to let him get a couple reps and get some legs under him before crunch time with these playoffs. But you also want to make sure you have as healthy as possible Jair. So it's a fine line to balance that. I don't know. It's a weird thing right now. Yeah, he's missed a lot of games. It is what it is. He's not asking for injuries. Our team will be better when he gets there. It's a weird thing on Twitter's just a weird thing in general, but just Packer fans, we're mad when we beat a team that's bad because they were bad. We're supposed to beat them. We're mad all the time, dude. There's no other way around it.
Merry Christmas, everybody. We're just mad all the time. Well, yeah, I think that puts a bow on this episode. We'll have plenty more over the next couple of days throughout the week on the audio side, on the YouTube side here as well. Make sure you're subscribing on both. There's new content usually each and every day, so make sure you're checking out both sides of it. Follow the show on socials everywhere at Pack a Day Podcast. I'm on socials as well on Blue Sky at Dan on the Mano. Jimmy, where can people find you?
Twitter, Jimmy_C08, I believe.
Perfect. Appreciate Andy and Monty and Camille for getting the holiday flu or whatever it is, for letting us come on and utilize the platform.
They're drunk alcoholics.
Yeah.
They're out.
hopefully this show continues to exist after today. If we do, hope to see you back again next week. If not, stay safe, and as always, go Pack Go.